For thousands of years, the high ground is always given the advantage. Sun Tzu even mentions this in The Art of War. While the development of aircraft changed the definition of the high ground, its advantage it provides remains. However, that advantage has been slipping. Newer and more capable radars and air defense systems are threatening even the most advanced bombers today, including stealth. Could it be that the large bomber planes we all know and we've had for the last 100 years are now finally becoming obsolete? But first, our sponsor, World of Tanks. It's a free-to-play, team-based MMO game centered around mid-20th century tanks. There are over 550 different tanks you can choose from to fight across more than 40 different arenas, from open fields to forests, deserts, and urban environments. The realism in the things like the highly accurate models and the damage they take make it a whole lot more exciting. Well-placed shots can penetrate armor and immobilize your enemy, but poor ones will just bounce off and do nothing but give away your location. The large number of tanks available includes all the classics from World War II, as well as hundreds more you likely never even heard of, from small, light tanks to incredibly large, heavy tanks with great armor but low maneuverability. There's tons of fun to be had just trying out different strategies and techniques. And again, it's all free to play, and free to win. You can have a ton of fun without spending a cent. So go down and click the link in the description. New players will get 7 premium days, 500 gold, and a premium tank, the Soviet T-127, using invite code TANKTASTIC. So go check it out. Again, World of Tanks. For a time, aircraft dropping bombs from overhead had the ultimate high ground, but it wasn't long until defenses were created. Interceptor aircraft would fly out to meet them, and massive numbers of AAA on the ground to shoot them down. To avoid AAA, bombers just flew higher. The problem was, though, that their unguided bombs would usually end up missing the targets. Better bomb sights and eventually guided bombs again gave the bombers the advantage, but it didn't last long. New surface-to-air missiles could reach even the highest flying aircraft, like the U-2. Introducing jamming helped, but still, the US lost 15 to 34 B-52s alone in one single operation during the Vietnam War, depending on what source you trust. So then, focus shifted on flying extremely low and fast, often incorporating things like terrain-following radar to avoid crashing into the ground. It made detecting them nearly impossible until they were right on top of their target, where their speed would get them past before they could be shot down. The F-111, the B-1B, and several other US, European, and Soviet attack and bomber aircraft used this low-level approach to bombing. However, flat terrain, with nowhere to mask your approach, new integrated air defense systems, and improved air defenses made this tactic much more difficult. Then the idea of stealth came. Things like the B-2 bomber built over 30 years ago still represents one of the newest tactics in bombing, and that is trying to make yourself invisible to radar so they simply can't shoot you down. And now the US is building a new stealth bomber, the B-21. China is also with the H-20, and Russia with the PAC-DA. But even these are unlikely to work alone against a defended area with modern SAM systems. Even the most stealthy bombers will likely never be able to fly directly over a target and drop bombs as they've been doing for decades. Modern radars and air defenses are still able to detect and shoot them down. Not at as long of ranges, but still long enough. In the past, nations operated much larger fleets of bombers, so losing a few, while still tragic, could still complete the mission and be considered a success. Today, the US operates 20 times less bombers than it did back in the 1960s, when it had over 3,000. This means you can't afford to lose many today. Those cutbacks on bombers hold true in every country, some of which don't operate bombers at all anymore, like the UK. It's just too costly and too dangerous. It seems as if the day of the bomber has ended. Of course, they'll still be used against less sophisticated enemies and undefended sites, but not to the level they did in the past. But that doesn't mean they're useless. Bombers have been undergoing a change. Many now have become flying missile trucks, carrying long-range cruise missiles to hit targets while staying itself at a safe distance, away from enemy air defenses. In fact, pretty much every bomber flying has the ability to carry these missiles, whether it's Chinese H-6s, Russian Tu-160s, or even US B-1Bs. Even stealth aircraft like the B-2 can carry long-range JASSM cruise missiles, and stealth is still valuable here. A 500 to 1,000 kilometer range missile might seem like plenty of distance, but some targets deeper into enemy territory could still put that bomber at risk. Early warning radars could spot them and scramble interceptors to go shoot them down, or even just spot them early enough to alert and ready air defenses to shoot down the incoming missiles themselves. In which case, stealth is extremely valuable to give your enemy as little notice as possible. This, and the fact that they'll still be capable against less defended sites, is why countries are still developing stealth bombers like that B-21 and H-20. But this also makes older bombers still valuable. The B-52 and Tu-95, for example, both of which have been in service now for over 60 years, actually exceed at this role. Their long range and large payload capacity gives them a pretty big advantage over the smaller, sleeker, stealth, and supersonic bombers, which tend to carry all their weapons internally. Part of the reason they have high-mounted wings was because nuclear bombs were extremely large at the time. Now they're much smaller, and that isn't a problem, but that higher clearance allows them to carry all sorts of large cruise missiles, air-launched ballistic missiles, and soon hypersonic missiles of all shapes and sizes. This is something that the B-2, for example, couldn't do. With them, any future weapon has to be small enough to fit internally in weapon bays. Older bombers like the B-52 also make great test platforms for this reason. Not only can they carry and launch to test future weapons, but also other things, like the X-15 spaceplane, NASA's X-38, and several others. So the day of bombers flying overhead, dropping their bombs right over the enemy targets is nearly gone. Stealth, speed, jamming, and low-altitude tactics are becoming less and less effective with more capable defenses. But they aren't out for the count. Their long range and large payload capacity are all they need to continue being relevant for the foreseeable future.